So, Muji talked a lot about sort of the enterprise security model, right? The enterprise security model, and a lot of this is still true, is most big companies would have data centers. They would connect the different data centers using private connections. The data center's perimeter would be secured using a bunch of different things, right? So they'd have firewalls, sandbox, various types of sandboxes. They would have um, filtering going on. They would have probably deep packet inspection going on if they can, and things like that. Now, this worked really well for a many years, because essentially what it meant is you're working inside the network, and you sort of tunnel into the network either using a VPN, and then once you're inside the network, then it was assumed that it is safe. Now that has been breaking actually for many years, and it just sort of what happened is I think the pandemic made it more apparent. It has been breaking before the pandemic as well. So this is not really a pandemic play, but it looks, the sort of the media talks about it as a pandemic play, and people said, well, but people want to work from home, and if you secure tunnel using a VPN, the experience is really bad. But before that, what happened is a lot of applications actually did move to the cloud, right? And you could sort of secure tunnel into your network, and then from there connect to the cloud. It just gives you a really crappy sort of experience. So and the terminology would be that you just have more surface area over which you can sort of have attacks happen, because you have these Byzantine paths that you're taking to basically access applications. So the cloud native essentially says that if you could treat the network as just plumbing, right? So you're not trying to secure sort of the network. You're treating the network as just a plumbing through which data is basically flowing through, but you're basically trying to secure data and applications. Then you can sort of get to this, nice cloud native solution. This is sort of what Zscaler is doing. And at a high level, what they're doing is basically they're putting web proxies. They basically built a distributed web proxy, or you can call it a reverse proxy if you'd like, around the globe. And and that allows good performance, because then a user can connect to one of the close by data centers, and via that data center they connect to whatever apps and those data centers have got, I guess, paths to the cloud, where basically a lot of these cloud applications are running. Right, and then you do all sort of clever things inside this, distributed network of data centers that you've got. So one of the advantages of these sort of platforms is that it's just the scale, right? So you've got this network that's distributed across the globe. They see a lot of transactions going through them. Because they see a lot of transactions going through them, and a lot of enforcements are happening on them. They also are really in a pole position to sort of detect, if you detect something bad happens in one part of the world and you've detected, you'll be able to sort of stop that in the other parts of the world, right? So it sort of enables, the scale enables you to actually protect and dynamically secure network and applications and data over time. So that's a brief overview of Zscaler. The other thing you'd find is there's a lot of commonality between, say, what Zscaler is doing and many of the other companies are doing, right? Because they're basically all relatively in the same space. And you could always ask the question, well, it looks like Cloudflare is also kind of similar in some aspects to Zscaler. And you can always ask, well, why should I buy the shares of this company versus that company? And my answer for that has always been that, look, this market is really big. And it is, because it's a big market, there are going to be multiple winners, right? And trying to sort of cherry pick which is the winner and which is not is kind of sort of not the way I think you want to invest in high growth. And that's not how I do it. That's why I would invest. I've invested in Cloudflare and Zscaler, for example, because I think they're both good companies. So the way to think, I look at these companies, I sort of try to analyze or ask few questions, and which are the following: try to understand how big the market is. And then I try to understand sort of how quickly a company is growing in that market. Then the next question I try to ask is, can it grow and scale profitably, right? So you want to see operating leverage over time. So, it's okay to be, say, a sub $1 billion revenue run rate company if when you get to 2 billion, you're going to actually be gushing a lot of cash. And then, of course, you want to ask is, this is all good, and you're giving time the opportunity, you're giving the company the opportunity of having time to grow, but you want them to have the staying power so that when they get to scale, they'll actually be valued on essentially free cash flow or earnings at that time. So you want them to be actually be able to stay around in the market. So if you apply sort of that lens to Zscaler, you look at the addressable market. The company would say the addressable market is about 20,000 companies, right? And these they define as companies with about 2,000 or more employees. And that they worked out based on the products they currently have is a addressable market of 70 billion. Again, I'd stress that I don't think they think that they can get the 70 billion, right? Because this company is right on about, going to probably be about 670 to $700 million annual revenue this fiscal year. So again, they don't need to win the whole thing, right? They're still a very, very small portion of the big pie. But the other thing to think here is, okay, they have a big market opportunity. How many customers have they got? They've got 5,000 plus customers already, which is pretty good. And they've got 25% of the global 2,000 companies, which is again pretty good. Right, it's really growing quickly, and there's been a bit of an acceleration in growth. I think again, that's been helped by a number of factors. I think working from home, the number of attacks, and all these things, Colonial Pipeline and so forth, is just going to help the White House's push towards, okay, security is important. We need to think about this, and we need to really. I think all of those things are helping. So yeah, the growth has accelerated recently, and the other thing I really like about this particular company is, in addition to the fact that, cloud adoption still in the early stages, there's a long way to go there. So this is, in the sort of cloud platform companies have, again, therefore a long runway. What happens, one thing to notice is number of companies tend to focus exclusively in sort of the US, North America market, right? And you'd see that the international revenue is actually relatively small. That allows other companies sort of, to occupy sort of that, space. Zscaler has actually done a really good job. They've got about 50% of their revenue is international, which is, which sort of again says that, they have got their, foot in the various pies that one could potentially think of. So I really like that. Like most companies in this area, they would have sort of a land and expand model, which is again very common now with the SaaS approach. So typically, a company would land with what they call Zscaler Internet Access, and then they've got some, so Zscaler Internet Access basically allows you to access the internet, in a secure manner, then access basically applications on the internet in a secure manner. In things like Microsoft Office and Microsoft Office Suite and things like that. Then they've got something called Zscaler Private Access, which is basically an add-on or another sort of think of it as a module that you could buy that basically provides similar functionality to Zscaler Internet Access, but for private applications. They've got a nice little tool called Zscaler Digital Experience, which basically gives you an understanding of sort of how the network experiences. So network traffic, there's a jitter, and there is, how much bandwidth are you getting and things like that. And often this is important really, because sometimes you might think like, oh, the cloud security is the problem. The problem might not be the cloud security solution. The problem might be actually that your home network that you're accessing things from is your telco is actually doing a bad job of giving you, and I experience that quite often. So, my upload bandwidth is probably only like 4 or 5 megabits per second at max in the best case. Then this company has gone into, has expanded into sort of workload protection. So, workload segmentation, again, this has been talked about a little bit. So this is, again, another direction sort of where the company can, build out, you get in through, you get your foot through the door, and then sort of, you sell additional pieces over time. And the way to check this, again, is to look at sort of net revenue retention metrics, which has been steadily in the 100% plus region. It's been 120%, I think, the last 2 quarters. So that's really good. We can see that there's a lot of upsells happening here. And then the other interesting thing is that you just look at sort of the operating leverage in the business, and you can clearly see that there's operating leverage there. So a company is expecting, as I said, somewhere 660, I think, revenue, 660 million in revenue, expecting probably somewhere around maybe 70 million in operating income. So that's call it EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. So you're starting to see the impact. It's free cash flow positive already, nicely. And again, but the caveat there is that like many of these companies, they're all free cash flow positive because, well, there's a significant stock-based comp portion, and then if you add back the stock-based comp, you get you see that it was free cash flow positive, which technically is correct because it is cash that they've got, because the stock-based comp is basically just dilution. But we need to remember that the dilution is there. But again, there is operating leverage that we can clearly see. And the other way to think about operating leverage for many of these companies is that they're spending heavily on sales and marketing. And there was this example of Palo Alto being beaten out on sales and marketing, but that actually works for this type of company largely because of two reasons. One is you can get this upsell from within your existing customer cohort. That's a pretty powerful thing to have. Then at the same time, if you spend on marketing, sales and marketing, you can actually get new people in through the door, which are going to again upsell. You can upsell over time. That's pretty powerful. And if these people that come in are going to be sticky, that is again really powerful, because you're spending upfront for potential revenue that you're going to be milking for many, many years, right? So that brings me to this staying power idea. And just to backtrack a little bit here, what I mean to say is that they could easily crank down their sales and marketing and become profitable, because they could say, well, we're just happy upselling and just a little bit of extra growth. So instead of getting the 60% growth last quarter that Zscaler has reported, you could get 30% growth and become profitable. So I think there is that trade-off to remember. So this brings me to the important question of staying power. And this really is, some bets you're making that the best of breed cloud solutions are going to be replacing security, legacy hardware security sort of vendor-based approach. This is a bet you're making. It looks like many of these companies are in that same boat. And then this is sort of also driven by the move to, sort of the cloud or hybrid solutions, public-private hybrid sort of adoption of the cloud. The other thing that I really look for in companies is sort of how they integrate. So, Zscaler, this has been mentioned, Zscaler works in partnership with CrowdStrike, right? That is really cool because, they're protecting the endpoint, you're protecting, basically providing cloud security solution that is sort of, replacing the enterprise focus on the infrastructure. You can work together, and that's really good. They also work with identity management solutions, right? But all of this put together, there's another reason why these people work together. It's basically once you have worked together with Okta plus CrowdStrike with Zscaler, removing these things becomes really hard because you have to re-architect the solution, right? So re-architecting or this high switching cost is a key thing. Then the other thing I like about some of these companies is that many of them are actually founder-run, with founders with substantial. So Jay Chaudhary, who is the CEO, founder and CEO of the company, also about 20% of the stock, highly rated on Glassdoor. So last I checked was like in a 4.6 rating or 4.7 rating. So that hints towards strong company culture. That's important if you want to invest for the long term. This has been mentioned a number of times. Many of these companies are expensive. They're expensive, because if you look at trailing multiples, they, on sales basis, they might be like 40 times sales. Something like CrowdStrike might be even more. But I think the thing to remember there, this is sort of a mental model that I think is useful. It's think about just the pace at which revenue grows, right? So if revenue is growing at 30%, that's sort of doubling every 2.5 years. If revenue is growing at like 70%, that's basically doubling every year. Very quickly every 1 point something. It's doubling really, really quickly. So if you're growing, so what is a 30 times multiple today could become a 15 times multiple just in a couple of years, and then could become like a 7 times multiple just another few years out, as long as the growth is sustained. So I think that the large market opportunity and the sort of stickiness combined with the growth, I think, is the reason why we see high multiples. So we'll end up paying. But yeah, again, if the interest rates goes up and over time and it goes up substantially, then of course future growth is going to get discounted even more, and then we are going to sort of see multiple shrink. So that's one of the risks we are taking with this sort of investing. But again, I think I've been very comfortable doing this. I really like Zscaler. As I said, I like really some of the other companies. But yeah, valuation, I think, is probably one of the key risks that I would worry about. I don't worry so much about competition per se, because as long as companies are executing and growing, that is basically showing that they're taking share. I think that's okay. And the market is big. Okay, to summarize, basically, cloud security solution. This is a company born in the cloud for the cloud era. One of the best-in-class platforms, really high switching cost, land and expand business model with really high retention rates, and a founder CEO who's got a brilliant track record, right? He's got his own money, his family's money in it, and he's got a great track record of building, I think, 4 other companies, which he has sold to multiple other companies over in the past. Maybe this is the swan song. He wants to go out in a big way. So, and has built a team that's winning. So that's Zscaler.
Yeah, man, great. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you deciding to start your Monday morning with us. And for the past year, I think this company, I think if you would have invested in March of last year, it's close to $5 billion now. And phenomenal run for the company. Just curious, what do you think about future opportunities for this company? And a lot of growth has been priced in already, or how do you feel about this for the next couple of years?
Yeah, look, that's a good question. So I think, yes, so the multiples have all expanded, right? Like, I mean, I've personally been invested in this company for a long time. So I've done really well with this, but I think you can continue doing well. I have when I invest in these companies at this sort of multiples, I expect market beating returns, right? So I'm thinking these can beat the market by a couple of percentage points easily, maybe more. You've got to be patient, is how I think about this. And again, I look at sort of the market size, 70 billion plus, less than 700 million in revenue, trailing, growing 60% last quarter. So roughly speaking, there's room to run, and it's growing, and they're sort of their go-to-market strategy is working if you can grow at that rate. So they got this guy Dali Rajic, who's the chief revenue officer, if I got the name right. He's done a good job of building sort of this sales organization that is really, really driving sales. They've got partnerships going on, so I feel comfortable holding. I if somebody doesn't have a position, I would feel and they're growth investors and are volatility tolerant. Having a position, sort of this, best-in-class companies growing really quickly, the founder run. I think that the team has every incentive to sort of execute. So I feel again, would it be nice to get in at a lower multiple? Of course, we can't go back in time to do that. But I think it's still market beating from here on. I think if you give it sort of give it a 3 to 5 year sort of horizon, I think things should be market beating.
Awesome, thank you, Anirban. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming. If you guys do not follow 7 Investing, make sure you follow. They definitely share some great picks. And again, I appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Last but not least, we're going to go back to the person who started it all. We're going to go back to Muji. I think he's going to talk Cloudflare. I'm sure he's going to be extremely technical. So, best of luck. Take your notepads out and take a listen.
I am not going to get extremely technical. Put the
I
notepads
love it.
back. Wait, maybe keep them out. Yeah, so thanks to all the speakers. I'm going to wrap up pretty quickly with Cloudflare and just tie it a little together, just through some of the themes I was mentioning at the start. So with Cloudflare, what you have is an edge network. They created a global network that spans across 100 countries, points of presence in 200 cities. And the composition of that is a global programmable network. You can think of that as a giant mesh that serves as a private internet so that they can route traffic between their points of presence. And then the edge servers that are at each point of presence, that is where their platform is deployed. And they serve, their core platform was around application protection. They serve as a proxy for you, any user to, or any, like website developer, application developer, anyone with server infrastructure anywhere. They serve as a proxy over that. And so they handle all the traffic that flows into your application as a proxy, kind of a man in the middle. And so that setup, allowed them a lot of success and got them to where they are today, because it allows a lot of capabilities around application security, application performance, application reliability. Because they serve as that proxy, they're known for, they can be a content delivery network where they can sit and deliver cached content from the application. They're known for their DDoS mitigation, speaking of cybersecurity, which is, taking these highly unsecure IoT devices have been hacked over the years, such as cameras, cash registers, smart fridges. You can hack all those things, and anything with a network connection can be reconfigured and turned into a bot for malicious intent. And so that's kind of caused the rise of denial of service attacks, which is flooding an application with thousands, tens of thousands, millions of requests per second in order to kill servers. And that was an attack vector, and even a ransom vector where we're going to flood and kill your cloud service because we're going to flood it with illegitimate requests. And so, Cloudflare gained a reputation as a great DDoS mitigation system, bot mitigation system, where they can help control, kind of good bots, which are like web scrapers, versus bad bots, which are trying to scrape your web content and steal it for themselves. And then, application performance, because they can serve as a cache over your content, and application reliability. Because of those backbones they have, they can route traffic faster than the public internet in certain cases. So you could be improving the performance of your application simply by joining Cloudflare's network. So that's their application platform. That's their core purpose that kind of got them to IPO. But as of about a year ago, I've been extremely excited because they've been doing other things with that edge network. And in particular, they started exposing edge compute with their workers system, which is allowing customers to have access to those same edge servers that they built the platform upon. And in fact, they built workers for themselves and are just exposing it to end customers. And I've written extensively on Cloudflare. Visit my blog if you want more information. And in particular, visit my What Are Edge Networks post on there from last August, September range that kind of explain the dynamics of edge servers and how they got to where they are. I cover Fastly and Cloudflare pretty extensively. But when I first started noticing Cloudflare after their IPO, they were getting more heavily into cybersecurity. And so this is an edge networking company that has cybersecurity at its core. It's always been around application protection, but they're expanding it now into new areas of protection, such as network protection, with their Magic Transit product that allows you to put Cloudflare's network and all of those app protection features like DDoS protection, rate limiting, load balancing, all of those things can be put over your enterprise network. And so if you're getting DDoS attacks on your headquarters network, you can mitigate that through the Cloudflare network. So they're getting heavily into networking protection. And from there, they started getting into user access protection with zero trust. They created a new product a year ago, January, called Cloudflare for Teams. That was an exact clone of Zscaler, what we were just talking about, which is a secure web gateway, controlling how users, serving basically as a firewall over users accessing SaaS applications. And then zero trust, which is controlling how users can access internal applications. So Zscaler, as Aaron Evan was just discussing, it kind of served both those purposes. It's a combination of secure web gateway and zero trust, and now getting into SASE, as I'll talk about. Cloudflare for Teams exactly replicated that same scenario. It's using their edge network with using the programmability of the network for cybersecurity concerns, and they built a new product line, Cloudflare for Teams, on their own workers' edge compute. And it really just shows you the potential of edge compute in general, is that you can start building these things that are controlling networking flows, in this case for cybersecurity purposes. But you're going to start seeing this arise with cybersecurity, with observability, anywhere data is exchanged. The rise of IoT and 5G is going to massively increase the amount of data flowing in from end devices out in the wild, whether it's smart buildings, smart TVs, smart cities, all means sensor data flowing somewhere. With cybersecurity, what they've done is leveraging that edge network to be closer to the user making the request and to be closer to the applications themselves on the other end. And so they serve as basically a private network mesh over the globe where, for zero trust purposes, a user can make a request for an application, again, talking to Okta for identity, talking to CrowdStrike for device posture. They work with both of those as a zero trust platform. And you enter, like Zscaler, you enter their private network closest in the edge server closest to your location. So if you're in the Midwest, in Illinois, Iowa, you're going to talk to a server in Chicago. I'm in the Southeast United States. I'm going to talk to a server in, I think I route to DC. Someone in Hong Kong is going to go to the Hong Kong server. And someone in, I think, Jakarta, is going to go to the edge server there. And it's going to leverage the power of that edge network to traverse the globe and can control how the user accesses apps from there. And so that's the rise of zero trust. Is I feel like platforms like Zscaler, who has developed its own edge network specifically for this purpose, and platforms like Cloudflare that's developed edge networking to take advantage of in many ways, both of these are greatly benefiting from their edge network design, which is putting these servers distributed across the globe so that they can access the system nearest them. It really keeps the latency of these systems down. You're not having to go all the way into some core cloud system only to come back out to an application. And so it's narrowing the latency on both sides of your request from their kind of private networking mesh encircling the globe. You, the user, are one hop away under 100 milliseconds from the nearest edge server, but so is the application on the other end. It's also one hop away. And so it's a architectural paradigm that greatly benefits these companies. And then they're now getting into SASE networks, which is instead of being about user access, you are worrying more about SD-WANs, software-defined WANs, which is interconnecting all of these disparate network locations in a secure way. And so because, again, they traverse the globe with these edge networks, Zscaler and Cloudflare are starting to interconnect networking locations. And that can be physical locations of a business, such as branch offices or retail stores, factories, Any way they've got to have pockets of networking that they need to interconnect can be connected through SASE networks, which is taking the networking as a service. So you're using their edge networks as a backbone for your own enterprise network. And they're able to handle the security of that network for you. So you combine these two aspects of, I mean, you think about what networks are used for. They're used for securing applications, and they're used for securing users that are accessing those applications, your workforce. So you can see how SASE networks and zero trust combine into this kind of all new paradigm of where you no longer not only have to maintain castle and moat any longer because there's no way to have a secure perimeter, but you can also not worry about how the networking happens at all. You can rely on these cloud native and now edge native services to interconnect all of your disparate locations, your disparate apps, regardless of what, if they live on-prem in a data center or in whatever cloud, wherever it lives. And then all your users, regardless of where they are, can now all connect through this common platform. And these platforms can serve as the backbone for enterprises. And so that's been the rise of Zscaler. And now it's an exciting new location that Cloudflare is getting into, which to me is the combination of two exciting paradigms I'm following, which is edge networks and zero trust SASE. And so I like the stance of both of these companies. I'm an owner of both Zscaler and Net, but Net more heavily because of this optionality I feel like they have with their edge network in general. So very excited about these companies. Just to kind of wrap up a little bit of what we talked about, remember I said layers of the onion. Security is thought of as layers of the onion that customers are trying to overlap for security. I think you can start seeing, you know, I think Dominic was talking about like a lot of the acquisitions that are occurring. The legacy players that I'd consider the original networking companies that were built around networking security and appliances, which is, you know, pre-built hardware to provide security. They're paying attention and they've caught up. You know, so they were a little slow to get into cloud native services, and then we're a little slow to get into zero trust and SASE. All of them are getting into it now. And so Cisco and Fortinet, you know, you go to their websites and you're absolutely going to see them focusing on zero trust and SASE. It's going to be heavily mentioned as kind of buzzwords on their websites. But they were so slow to kind of get to it that they led to the rise of these other class of companies and have given them a foothold into having, you know, a huge amount of success with the growth that they've been able to do and amassing customers that have adopted this paradigm earlier than others. But I think you're going to see a huge groundswell of a lot of enterprises moving towards SASE and zero trust as a core concept. And instead of that patchwork of services, they're going to start moving towards companies that closely partner together or companies that can provide both kind of all the plethora of services in one platform. And so that's why you see a lot of this acquisition going on and these tight partnerships like the one between CrowdStrike and Zscaler have emerged. You have a legacy company like Palo Alto that sold firewalls has now completely retooled its entire internal segmentation of how its business runs around trying to be the next combination of zero trust of Cloudflare and endpoint protection and Zscaler for zero trust and SASE in one company in two segments. So they've completely reconfigured their organization to be CrowdStrike plus Zscaler at this point, in the hopes of saving their existing business, all the existing users of their firewall and next gen firewall, which is firewall as a service services. So hopefully that kind of just puts a bow on the end. I think you're going to see also, I guess, one other thing I'd focus on is the analytic capabilities. Observability is about creating platforms where you're taking all the metrics out of your infrastructure, your services, your servers, throwing it into a platform so you can apply ML and AI over it to do anomaly detection and see how your applications and services are running. Cybersecurity is the same core concept. It's building, collecting all the signals from all of these sources of your networking traffic, your user traffic, user access, your applications, collecting it in one place called a SIEM, which is SIEM, which is a dashboard for observability over cybersecurity metrics. And now we're going to see the rise of analytics in this because they want to build smarter AI that can detect and be faster than the AI that the hackers are developing in order to do breaches. And that's the battle you're going to see play out from here is the rise of analytics over all of this. And you're going to start again, you see these platforms and these partnerships emerging. You're going to see an inter exchange of intel data so that there can be smarter analytics as you're exchanging data between platforms so they can share. And it just provides more context as a user is moving through these systems to have the big picture. And so you're going to start seeing these partnerships more and more around intel data around and the development of AI over all this as well.
Hey, Muji, it's Dominic.
Thank you.
Got a quick question for you, Muji. The serverless architecture that they have with Cloudflare Workers, what is your expectation there? I mean, to me, that seems so forward-thinking with no VMs, no servers, no containers to spin up or manage. I mean, they could be embarking on a whole nother piece to go take on Amazon.
That's exactly the good way to put it. That's the optionality and why I like this company so much. It's a cybersecurity platform that's developing around Zero Trust and SASE, and they have a whole initiative called CNI, which is Cloudflare Network Interconnects, so that you can even eliminate traversing the public internet. You can directly interconnect your headquarters factories into their private backbone. But even if you are on the public internet, they're helping interconnect it all. But it's that optionality and why they have kind of rebranded as Cloudflare One, a menu of services that they allow over all of it. So a company might sign up for Zero Trust, but they want to also hook the customer into the network protection, DDoS protection, into the application protection. That's their core platform up to now. And now into serverless compute with Workers. It's a little bit of a wild card, and I like that they're not trying to guess at the TAM of it. And I think they later admitted, the CFO in a recent investor conference, admitted that the numbers that they were getting from trying to extrapolate out what the potential with Workers and serverless compute could be was just so astronomical that they didn't feel comfortable even guessing at it at this point. So it's a giant wild card to me. I'm extremely excited about their potential with just their core platform, their potential with cybersecurity into Zero Trust and SASE. But it's, I guess the issue with workerless or serverless edge compute is that it's up to every customer to figure out the journey between what's appropriate for edge compute versus what's appropriate for cloud compute. And every customer then has to make that journey on their own to figure out how to best leverage an edge network. And so I think there's just I like that they're conservative with guessing of what the potential could be. And that's why there's so much excitement too about Fastly. But I like what Cloudflare is doing because of the optionality again. There's a lot of different ways that this can go. And as I said in a piece, they're basically becoming the Borg of the internet, that they want to amass all the interconnects, all the apps, all the users, and they can be the kind of more secure version of the internet. So a lot of options.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, you didn't even touch on Cloudflare Pages. I'm just, reviewing some of it here, and I'm a Cloudflare shareholder, and I think one of the things I like that Matthew's doing is we have, I think, they have 250,000 plus free customers, and so they have them as beta testers for all the free applications for their new products. So they get that customers get to actually try out the new products, and then they get to give their feedback of what they would change. And so it helps development be customer driven, customer focused, and they're able to produce more products that are ready to launch faster.
Indeed. And yes, there's a lot more to get into. I recommend a piece I wrote. I've written on Cloudflare extensively last year. Besides that, what is Edge Networks piece I was mentioning earlier? I wrote a piece called Flare Ups in late December that really does cover the gamut of what they're doing. It gets into the serverless compute more than I was going to get into today, and pages and all the other aspects there. So they are becoming like a developer ecosystem in general. That's kind of that wild card aspect to the success, and is really just the icing on the cake, I guess, to me, in my investment thesis. So I'd go back and read that, and then just to pitch myself, I have made a premium subscription service where I do cover these things in detail with cybersecurity and data and analytics, edge networks, and I'm about to cover Cloudflare and Zscaler pretty extensively the next 2 months. So.
Thank you. Great job, Buji. Wow, very good job. I wanted to ask you a quick question, if that's okay. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. I'm just curious. I know you kind of shared your perspective probably 6 months ago on why you ended up selling Fastly, but do you mind opening up a little bit? If you don't want to, no big deal. If not, we can just pass it to Max. But I'm just curious to kind of get your insight on that.
It's a management issue for me at this point, and I wrote on it for my premium subs a bit. So that's one place people can look. But it boils down to I've got some issues with management and product cadence about how they've just kind of invisibly developed this product with an extreme amount of potential. Let's be clear. Fastly has an extreme amount of potential, absolutely. But I just don't like the steps in how management is currently running operations and the sales, the go-to-market process, and then the product cadence of how products come out and are released to the public. It's all behind curtains at the moment. And so that's kind of the crux of my reason why I'm not investing in them.
Can I quickly jump in about Fastly versus Cloudflare? So just I'm an investor in Fastly as well. So Cloudflare, I think execution has been brilliant. I think one of the things about Cloudflare that's really impressive is just the pace of innovation. Pace of innovation is just it's been crazy. So you can always this is the proof is always in the pudding. So they're innovating at a really crazy pace, and as Muzi basically described, right? I mean, they've basically got a product which essentially looks like Zscalers, right? So what I think what we need to see happen is over time how their revenue growth and actually their revenue, in terms of the total revenue, they're actually one of the smaller ones in terms of the total revenue that they've got right now. But they have the potential actually to significantly grow that revenue base. So I think what has happened with Fastly though, so Fastly's edge computing has not really, the edge computing I think it's not really taken off. I think they have growth challenges that have, so I look at Fastly primarily as a CDN company, a modern CDN company, which has this edge computing optionality that it hasn't fully leveraged. I think that's my current thinking. Although, I also think that it's also one of the cheaper companies with potentially a very good technology stack that is, as Muji said, is basically lacking from a go-to-market strategy. So, it could potentially be a company that someone wants to actually acquire down the road. So I think that's sort of the, so Fastly is kind of stuck a little bit in sort of, a land where, where's the technology going and where is the sort of go-to-market strategy for that? And that's where I think it's sort of, caught me a little bit of, no man's land territory sort of thing. But yeah.
Great point.
Just
Wanted
to
to say,
slightly circle Fastly back to the cybersecurity communication, or the discussion here.
Go ahead.
Cybersecurity, or Fastly did acquire a company called Signal Sciences that is doing some interesting things with application security. And that's what I mentioned before called RASP, where you're basically embedding a feed to an analytical service for cybersecurity reasons from your application itself, and you can be making real-time decisions about what app users are doing within your application. I do see that being having some potential, but I like what you said there, Arnavan, about the way to currently think of Fastly. That's very appropriate.
Okay. Max, does that wrap it up?
I was just going to ask our speakers if how do they feel about maybe opening for Q&A questions, or we're 2 hours in, so I wanted to respect your time, guys, and thank you so much for participating with us today. I have just a couple of requests for questions, so if you're willing to stick around for a little bit longer, we can, or just let me know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I
I'm a
can
cool.
certainly stick around for a bit.
I can
Okay.
stick for maybe 10
I'll take
odd
them on the
minutes.
road. I'm going to hop to my car, but I'll take a few
Oh,
questions.
no problem.
Okay. I see Chris Seifel asking. It shows connection on my side. I don't know my side. Chris, can you hear us?
I think we're getting an echo from him a little bit.
Yeah.
Ban him.
Chris, take your headphones off.
We've lost him.
I can't hear anything.
I'm sending him a message.
Okay, so while we're waiting on Chris, let me add
I'm back. I'm
Ernest
back.
as a
If
speaker.
you guys,
I think
if
he
that's
has a
all right.
question.
Yeah, but
Go ahead.
my phone just connects to my laptop for no reason. I have no clue why. Hey Muji. So since I have you, I'm gonna take advantage. So kind of one question all wrapped up into, or a couple questions wrapped up into one. Wanted to get more of your, I guess, live perspective on CrowdStrike's acquisition of Humio, what that live log ingestion does in terms of their competitive moat. Obviously, I think that it does a lot of great things on just the data velocity side for Threat Graph, but wanted to better understand your view in terms of their positioning in the market. And then what your views are in terms of what may happen in terms of customer acquisition for Crowd and maybe some of the other faster growing endpoint and workload protection companies, given the fact that we've now seen both McAfee's enterprise business and FireEye be acquired by, was it Symphony or whatever it is? So just want to better understand, your views there on the customer side, because we did see that after Symantec was acquired by Broadcom, that kind of gave a boost to CrowdStrike's business. So yeah, I just wanted to see if you could riff on that.
Yeah, I mean, just to start there, I absolutely have a preference for the pure plays instead of the acquisition Frankenstein companies, as people like to call them, where you're just kind of bolting on a bunch of acquisitions and putting them together. But like I said, it's a rising tide. He's going to lift all the boats here. Everyone's going to succeed. But I have the feeling that a lot of the companies that are bolting on Symantec into their engine are going to, and there's private equity that's sweeping up a lot too. Thoma Bravo is a huge one. They're trying to build the next platform to be what is known as the security cloud. And this actually overlaps pretty heavily with the other part of your question about Humio. And unfortunately, my premium subscribers are going to get a little more info. I'm not going to go into too much here, but it's one of the topics I'm going to cover in the next 2 months. But I gave the hints of it earlier, which is when I said cybersecurity is a lot like observability, and that you're applying ML and analytics over this pool of data. And so you are seeing this intermixing of the two industries, absolutely.
Right.
Both Datadog getting into cybersecurity,
Yep.
CrowdStrike getting into observability, SentinelOne did the exact same thing in the name of kind of rebranding EPP, endpoint protection, into or EDR, which is, there's two sides to endpoint protection platforms like CrowdStrike. It's EPP, which is the agent that installs on the devices and provides the real-time protection of the device. And then there's EDR, which is the platform that sits over it and manages the entire enterprise's pool of devices through a single interface.
Yep.
And so what they're trying to do is XDR now, which is interspersing other contextual information, as they put it, which means all the other information besides what the endpoint can see itself about the network, about the user, about anything else that they can pull in. And that's where the observability data starts providing that. And so it's the bigger picture, basically.
Got
that
it.
these platforms are starting to evolve around. But look at a company like Splunk. They just an observability company, but they're getting heavily into security and are trying to completely retool the entirety of their platform, as is New Relic, around we'll collect all the data and now we're going to charge you for how you use that data. We're going to charge you for the analytics being run.
Right.
And so you're seeing a posture change by cybersecurity and observability industries, and they're starting to merge together.
Right. And you can tell me to just go read more of your work or to wait, but just wanted to better understand because, obviously every company is going to claim that, their technology is special, best in breed, et cetera, et cetera. Is the threat graph and the usage of, or the fact that Crowd touts a single agent across a threat graph, is that truly unique and special? I'm just trying to better understand what this data advantage is for CrowdStrike, and obviously recognizing that quantity of data is just one piece of it. Setting the features and really programming the model is another fact, which is more on the expertise side. But just want to get your thoughts on what the true competitive advantage is for Crowd, and maybe how other products may compare.
So CrowdStrike was named CrowdStrike, the crowd aspect of it,
Yep.
because of the crowdsourcing of data. And so
Yep.
the inherent advantage, just to go back kind of to my flavors of security piece from now almost 2 years ago, the inherent advantage you get as a cloud native service is that you can see over the entirety of your customers at once. And with cybersecurity, that is incredibly vital, and why these new kind of next gen cloud native platforms were able to gain so much power over the legacy platforms in Castle and Moat, is that visibility that it gives them. And so that, again, that kind of blends into why observability is also quite important. It's just visibility over your infrastructure. And so you're going to see this blend together of these platforms, and much less, the division of like CrowdStrike working with Zscaler. CrowdStrike protects the device itself. Zscaler protects the traffic to and from that device, and you start seeing these partnerships come together. But I think you're going to me, I expect this all to culminate in the rise of these clouds and trying to become their own mega platform, to start competing with themselves, much less start to integrate their analytics together. That's kind of where all of this is going.
Yeah, you kind of see it with kind of the way that CrowdStrike lays out graphically, the Falcon platform. It really is, to your point, the platform dynamic. Yeah, I was just trying to figure
Certainly,
out.
I mean, this is the answer I'd love to give you, Chris. You can see it in their numbers.
Yeah.
Clearly, it's having success as a platform because it's amassing so many customers, and it's saving them. Much less all the other tailwinds that I talked about with something like CrowdStrike,
Right.
which is where it's a pick and shovel play for zero trust, because you could tie that device posture into the rule making engine and control access through. Is this device registered in our enterprise network, and is this device showing that it's free of malware? We require both of those things before we'll allow this zero trust connection to our internal HR app.
Yep.
So it's just so incredibly well positioned right now as a company.
Yeah.
And now they're getting into observability, as you were just mentioning, and so it's it's a little unknown what that's going to bring. At its bare minimum, it brings additional data sources to Threat Graph.
Yep.
And you're seeing things like Okta even go further with their risk engine API, which allows integration of platforms over identity security. So you can start intermingling all these things. That's kind of what I'm getting at with the intermixture of threat intel.
Right.
That's what I think you're going to start seeing.
Yeah, I'll stop hogging the mic. I just, Muji, I'm getting ramping back up to speed as part of my new job on Crowd. So just have a lot of things I've been reading and doing in terms of the research side. So maybe after your piece, would love to set up a call and pick your brain some more.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for the question, Chris. Thanks for asking, Muji. I just added Ernest as a speaker as well. Ernest, do you have a question?
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Yep. Ernest, are you there?
Thanks. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Hey, Ernest.
Yeah, first of all, just wanted to say thanks to Max and Mark for organizing this. Fantastic. And all the speakers have been wonderful. Just a quick question. I'm not sure who this is directed to, but perhaps Muji, you there, and you were speaking about CrowdStrike. You were mentioning in your talk that the legacy players are getting into zero trust and SASE networks. And, my question is, if you look at where they're rated, so CrowdStrike, and you look at its rating, if you were to buy it now and you wanted to do pretty well over the next 2-3 years, that thing's going to have to continue growing very, very fast. So my question is, how do we as non-experts in this industry sort of look at the market and see, what are these other legacy players going to do? Because if they start grabbing a little bit of market share, yes, they're a bit behind, but if they start grabbing some market share, perhaps Crowd's revenue growth will drop dramatically, and then, we just could find this thing capitulating over the next 2-3 years. Still a great company, but just, valuation may just compress massively. So I'm just trying to see what are you thinking on that front?
So, I'm a hyper growth investor with an extremely condensed platform or portfolio. And I don't have a platform. I guess I do have a platform, my blog. And I guess that's condensed too. But, so I'm always looking for hyper growth. I'm always looking for land and expand with these subscription recurring revenues. Models of companies. And I went into that extensively on my blog. I talked about my investment thesis in a piece called What is Hypergrowth back in May, if you want more details on my investment thesis. But, then that's kind of where the technical expertise comes into play is, identifying the trend. And in this case, the trend is zero trust and SASE networks is the trend to play in cybersecurity, because it is the next kind of foundational change for how network security is going to happen. Is you're going to have platforms interconnecting all of your things that need protection, your networks, your apps, your devices, and all the routing of traffic across them. It's going to happen over these platforms. And so it's about choosing who's having success now is the ultimate part of this choice in the current hypergrowth. And then looking at the how quickly customers are continuing to grow, how are these companies doing in this land and expand model, where they're able to, in the case of CrowdStrike, create this platform and continue to expand the applicability of this platform. And same with Zscaler. They started with software secure web gateway and zero trust, and are now getting into things like digital experience tracking and workload segmentation, which is machine to machine zero trust. So they're finding ways to pivot their platforms from here. So, in Zscaler's case, it's going from users to apps now to machine intercommunication. That's going to be extremely appropriate for IoT devices and for workloads going through the cloud. And so they're really pivoting what their core audiences. And so that's the kind of platform pivots I look for. And same with CrowdStrike, that's got so much tailwind from not only cybersecurity being realized as it's extremely important, but also that this executive order that a few of us have talked about, where they're doubly positioned for, which is endpoint protection and being a linchpin to zero trust. There's extremely well positioned for all these moves from the federal government. So lots of tailwinds to come with these platforms. So doing well now, and the general premise of companies doing well now will continue to do well in the future. They're showing their management is capable of making good decisions, and their product team is able to create market fit for these solutions, and their sales team is able to sell it. So that's kind of what the hypergrowth is proving now, and then where I like to apply my expertise and why I created a premium service is that I like to look deeper than and try to figure out where these platforms are going next and where these technologies are going next, and so how it all interconnects from here. And that's the future potential. Hopefully that answered your question, Ernest.
Thanks very much, Muji. It does. I appreciate that. So you're basically just really looking at the companies that are ahead of the curve and just, they're just keeping successful. That's, I think, what you're saying. Thank you, guys.
Sure. I kind of wanted to build off of that. How far behind are the legacy players? It doesn't have to be Muji or whoever wants to answer that. I mean, are they that far behind?
They're having a lot of success too, as mentioned with Fortinet, VMware. They're all moving into this. I think maybe VMware is pretty well positioned, just given all of their fingers into data centers in general. And so, they're certainly one to watch, but they're not achieving hypergrowth now. It's kind of diluted with the rest of the company. And so that's kind of why I, again, prefer pure plays, is that as an investor, it just allows me more potential for success rather than, more conglomerate-based companies. But there's, rising tide is going to lift all boats here. A lot of the legacy players are paying attention. And so, this is a pretty interesting industry to keep a close eye on as a hypergrowth investor. Even Splunk. Splunk is having huge success in their security arm. And now they've retooled, and Palo Alto has completely retooled their internal segments, as I've mentioned. And so everybody is absolutely starting to pay attention. So now it's a matter of who's going to amass the customers. Now, the legacy players absolutely have a head start. They have the existing pool of them. Sorry, I'm getting in my car here. I think I switched off there for a second.
I'll just quickly jump in. So a couple of things. I think in sort of most technology areas, if you have like a couple of years of runway ahead, like if you've started a couple of years ahead, that's pretty good. Sometimes you get 3 years, and there are some famous examples like AWS got like 5 years of runway before other people caught in. Ultimately catching up, if you think about even building a threat graph, like data has sort of at some point, whatever you're doing, you have got, I guess, diminishing returns happening, right? I mean, if you need some amount of data, labeled data to train models. Once you've built that, it's a question of refining those models, and it's going from like 90% accuracy to a 95% accuracy in your model. That's harder, and then going from 95% to 98% is even harder. So I think it's this. If companies, I think, what realize that they need to make a transition to a sort of a new SaaS-based, cloud-based networking environment, then they're going to make that transition happen. it's always a question of when, I guess, they start. I think they all eventually will start. Otherwise, that basically is not starting basically calls for demise of that particular product line of your company, right? And it's just a question of realizing, and we have seen this happen in many different ways, right? So you see that Azure and GCP now have got substantial share of the cloud market, right? In the infrastructure as a service market. So I think legacy players are going to be fine if they make the transition. Some companies are making the transition, and the other key thing is that it's just a big market, right? So security has been a fragmented market. It's going to remain like that, and the other key thing to watch is just optionality, right? So some companies are building, again, the pace of innovation really matters, right? So some companies are going to try to catch up. At that point, is your company or the companies that you're betting on innovating fast enough to sort of open new frontiers and new doors, like Cloudflare, for example, doing with its edge computing platform, using that to start new areas. And the TAM, we can say the TAM is huge, or we don't know, the TAM is unknowable. The same thing, look at Zscaler. Zscaler is getting into sort of the workload side of so workload segmentation and things like that. So I mean, again, pace of innovation, I think how quickly companies are innovating and sort of trying to open new doors and new areas, I think is the thing. But yeah, I think the rising tide lifts all boats really is sort of, I think, the underlying theme in this area.
I just want to chime in. I love that point about innovation. I completely agree. I go towards the innovators.
I think you're cutting out a little bit, Muji. I don't know. Yeah.
I think Muji is driving, so that's why he's on and off.
Oh, I am. If you can hear me, I was just agreeing with the prior comment that innovation is everything here.
Yeah, 100%. Let's take one more question, and I think we're gonna wrap it up. We're already like almost 2.5 hours in. I'm gonna add San, I think, as a speaker. Based on his description, he's a software engineer, works for ServiceNow. It'll be interesting to hear his question.
Hey, thanks, Max, and thanks, Modi. Thanks all the speakers for doing this. So, the question I have is, I recently, so being a developer, so I heard about the developer community from Cloudflare that they started opening the gateway for the Ethereum network for crypto. Any idea on what exactly they're planning to do from the Cloudflare side? Thanks. Can anybody hear me?
Was anybody able to hear the question?
Hi.
I kind of heard you, but you're a little muffled. If you want to.
Oh, can you hear me? Is it clear now?
I think wherever you are, it's pretty windy, so that's why we have a little bit of difficulties hearing your question. So if you can repeat it, that would be great. Thank you.
No, I was, hi, I'm talking about the Cloudflare opening up the, the network gateway for, Ethereum network on the crypto side.
Did you guys hear his question?
I think that's a Muji question there on the developer side for Cloudflare.
Yeah, Max, he was asking.
Hey, sorry, guys. I think I'm getting in and out of service, so I'm going to have to bolt, unfortunately, and go join my family. But thank you all.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much, Muji, for participating. We'll appreciate it.
Yeah,
what about some
sure
other speakers? Yeah, I'm not sure either. So I guess we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up.
Sorry. So basically, yeah.
proxy.
Well, anyway, thank you so much,
To
guys,
chime
for
in,
participating. You have an answer?
well, I say I don't know specifically about this, but yeah, it's like, whether they've opened up the platform or not. But again, they have been experimenting with a lot of things with the Cloudflare Workers platform. So
Great. Well, wanted to say thank you so much one more time to all our speakers. Great job as always, and thank you all the listeners for taking the time to join us on your Sunday afternoon. And look forward to releasing the details for our next chapter in the next week or two. So yeah, thank you so much, guys, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Mark, do you have anything else to add?
Thanks for coming, everybody. Nope. Thanks for coming, everybody. I think Max will put out an announcement in the next few days of what the next chapter is. We're not sure yet, but appreciate all the speakers on the questions and the engagements. Have a good Sunday night. Thanks.